going to just briefly speak about the resolution that we reached and was passed through the Senate yesterday unanimously. That was done. We did not have to return. We were able to get it through a parliamentary procedure called unanimous consent, which means everybody was willing to go along with it as a bipartisan group. It provides our small businesses some more certainty. We know there are lots of people in line who got cut off, unfortunately, last week when efforts to put more money into the PPP failed. We also know that our hospitals are really struggling and that there's more dollars in here for our medical professionals in our hospitals, and also some additional other support. On the economic front, it's at $310 billion for PPP. It is carved out a little bit to give some weight to some smaller institutions, not the big banks, and that will help us, I think, in West Virginia. Most of our people that we're getting positive reports from have worked through their community bank or their credit union. It also enhances the the economic injury disaster loan, which has also been stalled out. It's less talked about, but we put $50 billion in there for loans, which is a low interest loan for our small businesses. That also has with it the possibility of a $10,000 small business grant. So we put some more money into that. We put more money into hospitals and testing. $70 billion or $75 billion for our hospitals, on top of the $100 billion that we put before, of which only $30 billion of that first 100 has gone out, and then additional $25 billion for testing, which is going to be split between the states and the federal government to try to meet that challenge of where I think we need to go before we fully open up, which is a more robust and more widespread testing availabilities, not just on the diagnostic side, but on the antibody side, which tells you you're immune, you've had it, and so I think that's going to be critical to us opening back up, being on the president's economic team. That's been a lot of the discussion. Just in closing here, before we go to questions, the PPP program has been very popular. It's the one where small businesses under 500 go to their lender, and it's the possibility of an 8-week forgivable loan. We've heard from folks from small businesses, small contractors, sole proprietors, larger law firm, for instance, that was able to access the funding. It's been a whole variety of businesses, but there's still a lot, particularly on the very small side, that haven't accessed this. We proposed to put the money in 12 days ago, but we got blocked by the Democrats, but cooler heads prevailed. There's been over 7,600 of those loans in West Virginia to about $1.3 billion. So moving forward, I think we can build on this. I think we can build on this program. We've worked a lot with Secretary Mnuchin. I've had several phone calls with him and the president to make sure that we get this help, which is obviously working very well when you consider the program wasn't even set up until April the 3rd. Well, I am just devastated by this. I've been working with I think Blumenthal and I have been working on this. He's from Connecticut, to try to see if we can shine a light, write some letters to Major League Baseball saying, by disenfranchising our minor league teams. I went down and visited the Bluefield Stadium and talked to those guys. It's just crushing to these communities, and I certainly am well familiar with the power, seeing how it's in my own hometown. The enjoyment of family fun, the economic boost to the region, the ability for families to have a chance to go out on an evening and not spend enormous amounts of money to be able to see America's pastime. Some of these teams have been around for 60, 70 years. And so I just think we're going to shine a light on this in Congress. And I just think it's really devastating, and I don't know if there's anything I can do to stop it, but I'm certainly expressing my displeasure with it. Well, I think that the governors are playing a big role here. Certainly we see that in our state and our surrounding states. I do think that there is a caution flag out to not opening too soon, because I think what would be exceedingly devastating to a state, not just economically, but just emotionally, would be to have to reclose. And so, those states, I think, are going to be allowed to make their own decisions, like our governor is making for whether it's school closing or what kind of gatherings we can have. I think he's mentioned that elective surgeries are going to be, some of them are going to be back up and running. So, I hope the states don't go too quickly, because I think that's why we need the testing, because the testing is going to have a lot to do with giving us benchmarks as to when and how we can reopen. I'm concerned about the two hospitals. Obviously, I think they're municipally or county-owned hospitals in West Virginia, Pocahontas, Webster County, small hospitals. This question was raised with Secretary Mnuchin. We raised it 2 days ago with him. He's working to try to get some flexibility there. A lot of our some of our rural hospitals across the country are owned by municipalities or counties, and they have been sort of ruled out of being able to accept these dollars. I think it's just a matter of getting better and some better advice and regulatory flexibility here. And we've been working on that nonstop to try to help those folks. In terms of rules for the state, this is turning into be a more difficult persuasion, because here again, I've talked to Mnuchin, we talked to the president, vice president. We've got $1.2 billion that have come in from the federal government to help the states, counties, and cities meet the challenges of the downturn of what's happened during this coronavirus outbreak. But it is stated in the law that cannot be used to replenish lost revenues and other lost tax revenues. We've heard the governor say the loss to West Virginia could be as much as $500 million. And we've been asking and begging for flexibility for our governors and our county and city officials to be able to replenish those lost revenues with these dollars and have that be an allowable expense. So I did notice that we were hoping to get it in this package that just passed yesterday. It's not in there, but there are some assurances that we're working on this, and that there's a lot of blue sky here, I think, and I think we're going to be able to push it over the edge. It's just still not a permissible expense, but I think in the end we're going to prevail with the president and the secretary and the treasurer and change the language in the law to make sure that our governors and city and counties can use the money for that. But as of right now, it's still not an allowable expense. Believe me, I've been working this one hard. I don't know that they'll have to make a reapplication. I think they just need to reactivate their existing application with their financial institutions. So if this is supposed to pass on Thursday, I think the president will sign the bill Thursday, so the money's going to be there Thursday. And so I think that I would be, if I were in that position where I was in the line but I couldn't get there before the money ran out, I'd be calling my banker today to make sure that I'm up and ready as soon as the spigot gets turned on, that I'm one of those people that's at the front of the line. So I don't think they're going to have to redo their entire application. Yeah, we did meet last week telephonically with the president and the vice president and many senators, bipartisan group. And the bottom line is that much of the conversation revolved around testing and how are we going to have the confidence and the ability to run the tests, and also where will that land? And I think what you've seen is, because this new CARES 3.5, I think they're calling it, has additional $25 billion in it for testing. It goes partially to the states, partially to the federal government. and some to the surge areas, where they're having more problems. I think that that's going to be one of the good indicators for this economic task force to say it's time to get up and running again. Well, here's where the 310 came from. I think that the initial ask was for 250, and then I think in response to some concerns that maybe some of the more rural areas or the smaller institutions weren't up and running to be able to run these programs, we added another $60 billion onto that. So that gets us to 310. Now, I've seen public reports where the Secretary of the Treasury is expressing he's hopeful that this is enough. I don't think anybody really knows, because even in talking with him, I think he was rather surprised at the depth of the interest and the amount. So we'll have to see as time goes on. I mean, that first money ran out in 10 days, amazingly. Are people getting left behind? I mean, we tried as hard as we could to make sure that anybody who's suffering either health-wise or economically has the availability of some help. So you see our hospitals have gotten some money. There's going to be more money in our healthcare providers. It's not just hospitals. You see the resurgence of FEMA coming up with more of the PPE, the personal protection equipment. There are some areas there that are getting left out. For instance, maybe a physical therapist office or a hospice. See, healthcare, like I don't want to say a second line, but a one-off from a hospital who might be treating somebody who has COVID. So we're trying to, solve that issue. I always worry about rural America because of our connectivity issues. I worry about that telehealth, teleeducation, and teleworking. So there could be some gaps there, and that's why I'm hoping we come back and decide, what have we learned from this? We've learned we've got to connect America now, particularly in the rural areas. So I think in any gaps that there are, I've certainly been approached by people who feel, one being your industry, the media industry, the newspapers and the local broadcasters haven't been able to access any help in terms of their lost revenues for advertising and other things. So there are certain areas of our economy that are still flailing, and we're keeping our eye on that, and hopefully going to go back when we go back May 4th, deal with some of these. Well, I think that, again, some of that is I've heard that too, in terms of people getting stacked up at their financial institution. So I think people need to contact their financial institution, and if that one's not working, find another one. You can call my office and ask for help to try to find. There's an institution. There's also some online possibilities. So I think that people are just going to have to. I'm not going to say be patient. You're going to have to be pushy. You're going to have to be pushy and get yourself in that. Make sure you're in that queue. So my Charleston office is 304-347-5372. And we can help you. We've been doing that. I think that's another discussion that we'll have when we go back May the 4th. There's certainly, I think, a universal feeling that some people have really borne the brunt of this, certainly by losing their jobs, but some people have borne the brunt of it by really being the people that are keeping the wheels turning. Certainly our health professionals, but even our grocery workers stacking the shelves. So I think we'll have that discussion when we go back in May, and I'm very open to that. I was actually thinking about this morning, like what have we learned? What are we going to actually have learned besides we need more connectivity? We need to manufacture things in this country that are critical to our to fighting all kinds of things, including pandemics. And those are things that we're going to work on, I think, very bipartisan and be successful to try to spur. But I think one thing that's really become very clear to me is our local media is absolutely essential to getting the word out, just from the governor's perspective, from my perspective, from our mayor's perspective. And so I know that's what you all are doing. I know you've been working really hard, and and it's kind of a strange time.